we're exploring a fascinating text today. It's Zion Voice, episode 25. And it takes this constant swirling global instability we're all witnessing and feeling, and it frames it in a really surprising way. Not as a signal for mass panic, but as a moment of, well, profound clarity.
What's so interesting right away is that shift in perspective. Our natural default programming tells us that conflict, uncertainty, these are just sources of fear. That's our reaction. But to look at this whole period as signs of the world shaking.
And that one word, shaking, just changes everything. So the mission for you today is to extract a really grounded, contemplative understanding of hardship and trust, something that moves completely beyond the usual sensationalism.
It defines the current state of the world as this combination of things. It's instability, it's conflict, profound uncertainty, and even, interestingly, those little moments of hope that sort of puncture the chaos. All of these factors combined, that's what creates the dynamic state the text calls the shaking.
That concept, the shaking, is our first big section, understanding it as a revelation, not as a source of fear, because we tend to internalize conflict and uncertainty as, evidence that things are just falling apart, a collapse. But if this shaking is meant to reveal something, what is it that it's revealing?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that's the instability acts fundamentally as an agent of revelation. The text mentions something it calls end-time awareness, but it's stripped of all the drama you might expect. It's not about predicting a date on a calendar, it's about observation. The shaking is really designed to make the fragility of human constructs visible.
What kind of construct?
The systems, the resources, even the idols, you could say.
Yeah.
All the places where we've chosen to place our fundamental trust.
That's a powerful insight because when the world is calm, it's so easy to feel secure in things like a stable economy or just the reliability of a paycheck.
Of course.
But when the shaking hits, when economic systems start to falter or conflicts erupt that seem completely irrational, it just exposes those things as being, well, conditional.
Precisely. The shaking performs a kind of stress test on all of it. It reveals that the allegiance we place in material things or in social assurances is probably misplaced because those things are finite. They're subject to collapse. What holds up when everything you thought was solid turns to sand?
And that question, it forms a natural bridge to our next idea, really. If everything we normally rely on is conditional and can be shaken, then what is the true non-conditional anchor? The text insists that faith is now more vital than ever.
And this is where the text challenges a very common, almost passive interpretation of what faith is. It clarifies the role of belief in turbulent times, and the distinction it draws is it's critical.
Which is?
That faith, in this context, is not a mechanism to escape reality. It explicitly rejects that whole escapist mentality. The idea that faith is some kind of spiritual insurance policy that just stops bad things from happening to you.
Okay, so it's not an escape. If it doesn't allow you to escape reality, what does it do?
Its function is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It allows you to remain firmly anchored through reality. The instability is happening all around you, the storm is raging, but the anchor holds you steady right in the center of it. The goal isn't flight from the difficulty. The goal is grounding amidst the instability.
Stability has to be generated from within, regardless of what's going on outside.
That's the key application. The stability comes from an alignment with divine purpose, which the text refers to using the name Yahweh. So we're looking at a system of belief where resilience is defined not by external calm, but by internal alignment. When you're anchored, you maintain a steady perspective, even when your environment is turbulent.
Let's deepen that conversation about the divine perspective then. Because the source offers a highly detailed and frankly challenging insight into how this divine purpose actually operates.
The text is very clear that Yahweh uses all life experiences for specific, ultimate outcomes. And this is regardless of how we might initially categorize those experiences as, good or bad.
Right. We often assume the good things are the blessings and the bad things are tests or punishments. It's a very binary view. But the source material just completely upends that.
It introduces this concept of dual utility. What's fascinating is the claim that Yahweh uses both what appears good and what appears bad, meaning both positive and negative experiences, to achieve the exact same four ends. And those are to protect, to refine, to redirect, and to bless those who believe.
That is incredibly hard to wrestle with philosophically. I mean, if I lose my business, I might interpret that as a painful tool used to refine me, maybe redirect me. But if I suddenly win a massive lottery, how does that sudden fortune serve the same purpose? How does receiving a huge blessing also serve to refine or redirect?
And that's where the contemplation becomes so necessary. The text argues that the utility is inherent in the divine intent, not in our immediate emotional experience of the event. So a major loss, losing a job, a relationship, a home, that serves as a forceful redirect. It strips away non-essential anchors, forcing a reliance on the true anchor of faith. That's the refining process.
Okay, and the sudden fortune, the blessing.
Sudden fortune can be just as refining, just as redirecting, albeit in a much more subtle way. It tests your character, your humility, your allegiance. Does this newfound wealth become a new, conditional anchor, a new reliance that makes you forget the divine source? Or does it allow you to dedicate your resources and your time more fully to your underlying purpose? The test is just as severe. It's just that the flavor of the experience is pleasant instead of painful.
So the immediate emotional response, pain or pleasure, is actually irrelevant to the ultimate spiritual utility of the event. They are both just tools in the divine workshop, serving the purpose of aligning the believer with their destiny.
Exactly.
Trust in a process where the roadmap isn't clear and the tools being used can feel either punishing or overly rewarding. It certainly makes you feel that every experience is intentional.
And that profound trust is essential, because it brings us to the text's most critical distinction, the nuance of divine covering. This is where the philosophy meets the practical reality of living through the shaking.
Let's set the stage for this, because the source makes a very specific and reverent reference to Scripture here. It's 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Now, on the surface, that sounds like an absolute physical, bulletproof promise. But the source offers a much deeper reading of that.
It does. It defines this concept as divine covering. And this is the distinction we really need to dwell on, because it counters our common human interpretation. The covering is not a promise that believers will be exempt from witnessing hardship. The promise is not about the avoidance of the event itself.
That's a crucial clarification. So if I'm surrounded by instability, if the covering doesn't stop me from seeing or experiencing hardship, what is it actually protecting?
The covering's true deep function is the preservation of destiny. The text explains that your ultimate life purpose, your trajectory as a believer, is preserved and maintained through trust and sustained alignment with Yahweh. The external world can rage, it can take, it can threaten, but the internal ultimate trajectory remains intact.
This is a fundamental reframing of what protection even means. We automatically define protection in material or physical terms, a shield against bad things. These are all threats to purpose. The covering ensures that no matter what hits you, the reason you are here, your mission, is preserved.
Think of it this way. A massive blow might destroy your material resources or even impair your physical health. Because of that alignment and trust, that blow cannot derail the four purposes we talked about. Protect, refine, redirect, bless. It might actually activate those purposes.
So the instability becomes something you move through with your mission preserved rather than something you just bypass entirely. It demands incredible resilience. It means that even the deep sorrow you feel over a tragedy is not a sign of the divine covering failing, but maybe a necessary part of the redirection process.
It radically redefines the utility of hardship. For the learner, this really is the central concept. When we view life through the lens of purpose preservation, we stop asking, why did this terrible thing happen to me? And we start asking, how is this terrible thing currently serving to refine, redirect, or protect my ultimate purpose?
This has been incredibly clarifying. We started with this concept of the world shaking, and we've ended with a grounding understanding that this instability is less about chaos and more about clarity. Clarity regarding our temporary reliance on human systems.
It's all about anchoring ourselves to the divine purpose when everything else feels unstable, and realizing that the events we experience, the challenging ones and the fortuitous ones, are ultimately tools designed for our refinement and redirection.
And understanding that your ultimate purpose can be preserved. That's a perspective that offers profound stability in volatile times. It shifts the entire focus from avoiding pain to maintaining mission.
Absolutely. To call upon Yahweh more than ever when the world shakes.
That knowledge is powerful.